Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Dan. I'm here with Sam Weaver of Fortune Weavers out of Orange County, California. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing better than I deserve.
Hey, I want to thank you for spending some time with me today. And, um, you know, I don't know if you remember how we met. It was,
Don't.
you remember? Okay, and I share this story a lot. We were at a meetup called, I forgot what the meetup, something entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And you know, it was a typical networking event, but it was kind of a classroom style. And we exchanged cards, and you asked me to meet me at the Barnes and Noble in Huntington Beach. And we've kind of had a storied relationship from then. But I
Mm.
always tell that story about you. You never know who you're going to meet at these events. One person can change your life and change your business.
Mhm.
Out of all the things that you do. So it was kind of per chance that we met, but I really should tell this story to other people. Like, these days it's harder for me to go out to these networking events because I got
Right.
3 kids now. But when I had younger, no kids, no family, it was easier for me to go. And I share this story because one person, one idea can change the trajectory of your life, and I think you were one of those people in my life.
I appreciate that. And absolutely. And there's no such thing as coincidence, Mr. Wynn. So no such thing. I don't believe in coincidence at all. I think that things are meant to be and our paths were meant to cross. And it's been a great business relationship and friendship along the way.
Yeah, yeah. And so, one of the most common threads of all the businesses that you've had, and you sought advice from me from, is real estate, right? And
Right.
I remember the story you were telling me. Like, you weren't always in real estate. You actually started off as a teacher, but even before that, you had some humble beginnings.
Yes.
Even before. Can you share a little bit, with my audience, like a little bit of that?
Well, let me take a deep breath. So, humble beginnings. Yeah. Mom and dad, my dad was in the Air Force. Mom worked at Montgomery Ward, type of a thing. When we came back from the state, we came back to the States from Germany when I was like 3 years old. Lived in a trailer on my grandparents' property. Long story short, I had a little falling out with family and moved out to a migrant community about 10 miles outside of town. So it was a rural community where I stood out by the color of my skin and my ethnicity. And so it was really rough. Lived in a trailer park up until I think I was 11 or 12 years old. Got picked on because I was different. And never understood that, but I'm sure it makes me stronger today. And so, I think back then they'd call you trailer trash. I think that's what the term would be. So, yeah, very rough. And then, mom and dad figured it out, got decent jobs at the post office, and we bought our first house and moved up from there. But those first 12 years of my life in particular were torture because I got made fun of for being poor and being different. And so I remember being 12 years old and making a conscious decision to say, I'm never going to let my children go through what I'm experiencing, because it's no fun to get picked on and bullied when you're different. Right. So yeah, so it goes from there. Dad said, make sure you get a degree. So that's exactly what I did. I followed marching orders and went to school, got good grades. I was a good student, good grades, and zoom ahead a little bit, met a girl, followed her down here to SoCal, and then didn't have a job. So I had a degree at the time, no job, and they were hiring teachers in the 90s off the street, literally. So I went for an interview, saw an ad in the newspaper, said I need to show my future in-laws that I'm actually going to be able to support their daughter, and went and applied and interviewed and didn't know anything. I didn't really know much about what they were asking me because they were asking me questions I didn't have any experience to answer. I'd never substitute teach or taught or anything like that. And they offered me 3 jobs with that. So that tells you the state of education at that time. They needed teachers. And so I took my first job, and the rest is, sort of history. So that's kind of how it goes. You get a degree and you go get a job, and I didn't even want to be a teacher, Dan. That's not what I aspired to be. I actually wanted to be an attorney early on. Funny enough that we're sitting across from each other with different career paths, but I wanted to do what you're doing, and that's not where life was going to take me. So I didn't marry that girl. Funny enough, I ended up marrying the librarian's daughter. I'm very blessed that I did that because, along the way I was interested. I never wanted to settle for mediocrity. I was either going to be a principal, I was going to move up the ladder. And so I read this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad back in, I don't know, 99. And man, I was kicking myself. I was like, this is exactly, he's describing his poor father, and that is me. And my wife supported me kind of going after my dreams. And a few years later, kind of zooming ahead again, I met somebody that was doing exactly what I wanted to do, which was flipping houses and buying cash flow properties. And I latched on, and the rest is history. And there's more to it, but yeah, so humble beginnings. It's no fun when you're not born into a wealthy family, because you don't have the skill sets that they would teach their children.
Right. And Rich Dad, Poor Dad was actually the book that was kind of a defining moment in my life too. And, you know, my parents actually had all higher educations, but they were kind of one of those book smart or book, you know, system educated people. They weren't as much as financially educated, you know, as we are, and how much we take stock of our own financial education. But that book, you know, taught me about, hey, these are the type of assets you want. Your house is not, your house is an asset or is a liability, and you have to think about this way. But can you take me back to kind of like the defining moment when you said, okay, hey, I'm reading this book, and I'm, you know, teaching is great, but I don't want to do this forever. Where do I want to go after this?
Well, you know, I knew I was trading time for money. I'm working a job that I didn't want to work. You know, I saw my father, my dad retired a postal employee, that his passion was computers. He wanted to be a programmer. You know, I'm in a classroom and I love what I do. I love the kids, right? You love what you're doing in that moment. But, you know, I quickly realized, when you start reading these books, you realize there's other stuff out there, and it opens up your mind to possibilities. And the defining moment, I was reading that book, I literally exclaimed out loud, "Oh my gosh, this is me." And my wife's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Oh, this guy's describing me." And that was that moment where I was like, okay, we got to make changes. And the thing is, the hard part is when you make that decision, you want it now, right? What's the secret? You know, what's something I can buy that's going to give me the secrets to get what I want? It doesn't work that way. It takes time. And that's probably the hardest lesson in this, is we have this microwave society where we want everything right now. And I had to pay my dues for a while. So, you know, really, I started getting into real estate in 2005, and I was not able to quit teaching actually until January 09. That's when I said goodbye. So, okay. But yeah, that moment happened in reading that book. And again, I was going to climb the ladder of education and trade time for money, or I was going to go create my own business. And I think this is something else we need to ask people is, are you an entrepreneur or are you an employee? Because if entrepreneurship there's a lot to it. You're juggling a lot of different plates, basically, or spinning a lot of different plates, versus an employee. You're kind of told what to do, and you have your marching orders every day. So anyway, we can dive into that later, but
yeah. So, I mean, you did mention a kind of a good point is, you know, you're the entrepreneur or employee. And I think you probably read this book, E-Myth by Michael Gerber. He talks about, you know, are you, even if you want to go out on your own, right? Are you the person making the pies, or are you the person running the pie shop? And there's, are you a manager or you're a technician? And there's our different skill sets. And if you desire to become a business owner, entrepreneur, you have to be able to detach yourself from being the technician, and get some self-realization about, just because I'm a good pie maker does not always mean I should open up a pie shop.
Yeah, I think it's the entrepreneurial curse. He defines it as, you know, the person that is the skill or tradesman decides, hey, I'm going to open up my business, and they don't have any accounting skills, marketing skills, sales skills, right? They know how to do their trade, but there's so many other aspects to running a business that people forget that are important. And if you don't know how to keep your books, your business will fail, guaranteed. Right.
Yeah.
So very, very important. But yeah, Michael Gerber's great. He's written several books in several areas. One is in regards to real estate investing. There's the E-Myth for real estate investing, which I think is really cool. But he also does it for lots of other career paths.
Yeah. So fast forward just a little bit, you did mention you quit your job, your teaching job in 2009, which was kind of the height of the recession and the real estate bubble bursting. So, most people, for them, that's like, hey, I got to go get a job. You're quitting your real job, right? So tell us a little bit about what kind of like the dynamics of the time that you said, hey, this is gold for me, and it's time for me to, stop what I'm doing over here and go all in real estate.
Sure. So the first person that mentored me was a man named Walt Ferrari, and he set up in 2005, he set up some rules. He said, you can't quit your job until I tell you. You got to get your broker's license. And when I say jump, ask how high. He's one of those guys, right? Old school. And so I had worked with him for a few years and had a lot of experience. And when that market crashed, Dan, it was prime opportunity. Most people it got quiet real fast, right? The market changed. And I call it, the sky is falling. Everybody runs for cover and it gets really quiet. And if you had been in the business and you had the right person kind of guiding you, you realize it's the opportunity. When everybody's running, that's when you dive in, because that's where fortunes are made. And I knew this was that golden ticket. And so, I went back to him. I said, hey, is it time? He said, it's time. Because he had predicted in 2005 that we were going to have this major crash. He goes, I've been, man's in his 60s. He goes, I've been through 3 of these. This will be the worst one yet. And when it happens, this is where you're going to make your money. And so, yeah, definitely not, and I left mid-year during Christmas break as a teacher, which is a no-no. I had a lot of great support. There's a funny story to it. Can I tell the story? Because it's a great story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I quit. I go tell my boss I'm quitting, and I hang around because I'm not going to just leave my students, right? They're super important to me. I have this dream opportunity that I need to take advantage of. And so I'm there. I kind of stick around during the day for the morning, 8 to 12. And I get a call from the assistant or from the office. Mr. Weaver, the assistant superintendent, is here to see you. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this person's going to pound on me for leaving mid-year. You don't leave your kids mid-year. And so, obviously there's a knock on the door. I go outside and the assistant superintendent gives me a scowl. And I'm like, uh-oh. And then he holds his hand in the air as if to give me a high five. He high fives me and he says, great time to go. Look, there's some major changes coming at the end of the year. This whole thing's falling apart and you are going to lose your job anyway. So go make your dreams come true. And literally gave me that thumbs up. Hey, go for it. And even though I was tenured, I was the low man on the totem pole. So maybe I would have been hired back, obviously, but I would have lost that job I had had for 10 years. Mm-hmm. So just one of my favorite stories, because no coincidence. It's all
right. Right. So, fast forward a couple of years, you've got, however many flips you have under your belt. And now you're getting people approaching you and say, hey, I want to do what you do. So what was, when did you start saying, hey, all right, so I'm capable. This is time, right, to start showing other people what I do.
Mm-hmm. So, always been a coach. Obviously I was a teacher for 10 years. And what I realized is the people that were mentoring me, Dan, were not teachers. They were just people doing what I wanted to do, but they weren't equipped with teaching skills. And so they could give good advice and I was immersed in it, which was a blessing, but they didn't really teach. And so what happened along the way is the first mentor, Walt, had shared with me, he goes, make sure you pay this forward. He goes, I didn't teach anybody along the way. You're the first person I've showed this business to. And I feel bad because this has been wonderful for me and I should have showed a lot more people. And so I knew I was going to pay it forward. I wasn't sure it was quite like this where I was running an academy, but what happened along the way is people would come to me for hard money loans. I'm a broker. So they'd come to me for a hard money loan and I'd see that they were going to lose money and they'd taken these classes and they had great education, but they didn't get the dots connected, so to say. And then they're being led by maybe a realtor that's thinking they're going to make all this money and they were borrowing family money and they were going to lose it. And so knowing that, I was like, oh my gosh, these people are going to lose money, sometimes 50 to 100,000 on a potential flip. And they're all excited about it. They think they're going to make 100,000. They just don't know the numbers. And so that's when I knew I had to do something about it. That's when it started. And so I started offering some free classes and, over time, then I started charging a little bit because your time is valuable. and something I learned along the way. And now I run, an academy which I think is the best at the right price, but it's hands-on, which people need. You need hands-on support. You can't go. It's hard to read a book and figure out how to do what we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some people can, but it's most people cannot.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things I learned a little bit later in life is I can read all the books in the world. I can read all the study guides in the world. But for me, the best way of learning is actually doing and failing, actually.
And failing, absolutely.
Yeah. It's like when I was studying for the bar exam, it's a 3-day exam, and a lot of people would kind of study the substantive materials. But I actually put my focus on all the practice exams that were available out there. And I would just do those all day long, because that is when I realized this is how I learn the best, is putting myself in as much as real life situations as I can. So when I am there in the real life situation, then I know how to execute based on what I've learned on.
So important, right? Because again, we have YouTube, we have all these websites, we have all this technology and theory, but application is scary.
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with a product like ours, where it's hundreds of thousands of dollars here in Southern California. You're not dealing with something that's $10, right? Or if you lose 10%, you're okay. If you're in a position when you're spending $500,000, $1 million, and it's other people's money, it's a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
So you better learn how to do it right.
Right. And find the people around you that will help you, do it right as well.
Yes. Your team is super important.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about that. I think as we get older, we're always like, hey, if I was, 18, 19 years old, I would do this, my life differently. And I know in your academy, you've got really young people and really old people. And I don't know if you heard this, I think it's a Chinese proverb, like, when's the best time to plant a tree? 100 years ago. What's the second best time? It is now. So tell us a little bit about kind of the spectrum of people in your academy that are seeing results.
Right. So it depends on who they are. So, a lot of people get into this and they don't understand that you have to put time in, right? You have to earn your stripes just like everybody else. But I think our youngest student is 19 and our oldest is 82, which I love, because it goes to show, I would rather have started when I was younger versus older, but hey, there's no better time than now. And if you have a passion or a dream, who's to say you can't start in your 80s, right? Maybe you worked your whole life in a job that maybe that wasn't your passion. Now, real estate was always something that you wanted to do. So, we have the whole gamut. We have almost every ethnicity, every religious belief, sexual preference, you get it, you name it, it's in here. And in this group, it's a great melting pot. And, we're a family, and that's what I love about it. It's not like an academy where you sign up and there's no one-on-one contact. There's live classes, there's relationships, and that's why in our group, you have to interview in. You can't just sign up. That's the difference. And it's because if I have to coach you, I need to know that I like you and I can work with you, and that you'll respect the fact and the fact that you're coachable. Can you take constructive criticism? Many times I tell people, no, it's not a good idea. And it's because I've already made those mistakes. So what, I say there's 3 types of people. There's foolish, smart, and wise. Foolish people are going to make mistakes over and over, right? That's why they're foolish. Smart people learn from their own mistakes, and wise people learn from the mistakes of others. I don't know about you, Dan, but I'd much rather be wise and learn from other people's mistakes, especially when it's financially involved, versus my own. And so a lot of times in this group, I'm saying, no, that's not a good buy. We don't buy in busy streets. We don't buy next to apartment buildings. We don't buy in small lots, right? Because I've already done it.
Yeah.
And doing hundreds of deals, you kind of get them from all different walks of life. And again, I've made some bad choices, taken some gambles, and, I pay the price. And so that's the benefit of being in the academy, is you get the benefit of borrowed credibility, and you get borrowed experience.
Yeah. And that's hard to come by a lot in industries like this. Let's talk about some of your older students, right? So what are some of the characteristics that, hey, I'm about to retire. Again, I can't sit around in my, in my rocking chair all day, right? What are some of the characteristics that make a good student for Fortune Weavers at that, that time of their life?
So the challenge of someone being at that stage in life is they have a lot of life experience themselves,
Yeah.
and it's hard to sometimes to coach someone that might be your senior. And so we make that clear up front,
Yeah.
right? That's the way this is. But the great thing about them is a lot of times they're looking for, they might have some retirement funds that they can use to for this purpose. If they've done things right, they are just at a different stage where maybe they're burned out on what they're doing or what they've done. And they're really, I don't know about rocking chair, but they're at a lot of I would say the majority of the people we work with are kind of in their 50s and 60s sometimes,
Mhm.
right? And so they have established relationships, they have clear cut goals on what they want to do, and they know that they don't want to work in the career path that they're working any longer. They're like, I'm done with that. I want to flip houses. And the other person, sometimes we get people that maybe they have another passion and they want to utilize the income streams from real estate because it comes faster in general. If you work hard, it comes faster and they're higher amounts that would catapult them into allowing them to have the money to fulfill their passion. And, we have one particular student, I'm not going to name names, that really could not stand real estate and flipping. Didn't like it. Just, it's not for me. Didn't like dealing with contractors, didn't like dealing with some of the stresses, but did very well. Matter of fact, 11 flips first year, 17 flips second year, did so well that they were able to use the money that they had figured out how to earn to go after to fulfill their acting career. And so they were able to, kind of take time off to go travel the world and do vlogging and things like that. So everybody's different. And that particular student started with me at 26, stayed with me a couple of years and went off and, went after their dreams. And now they're highly successful. And so so there's a whole gamut. But yeah, the person that's older, a little harder because are they coachable? So we got to set those rules. The younger person's a little more coachable. The hardest sometimes is the person that's kind of in the early 30s because they think that
Know everything.
they're indestructible and they still think they're in the kind of that 25 to 30-year-old range where
Right.
you can't tell me what to do. I'm just going to, and they tend to be smart. They tend to make their own mistakes. Right. Yeah. I've had some, there's times where we won't back their deals. We say, I wouldn't buy it, so I'm not going to encourage you to do it. And they'll do it anyway. Yeah. And, the best advice they say I gave them is the best deals are the ones sometimes that you walk away from.
Yeah. Right. Wow. Some awesome stories there. Let's kind of go back to Walt. And, I think there's always, first you kind of have an epiphany and then you're like, okay, I got to go find someone that is where I want to be. How did you find your Walt? And, let's go start there first. Yeah.
Oh, so this is a great story. I'm all full of these stories. Yeah. So, I had a very close friend that we were reading the Rich Dad books with, and he was probably 10 years older than me. And he was kind of the big brother of our relationship. And, he was gung ho on doing this real estate thing. Matter of fact, he's kind of the one that got me more involved in it. And he introduces me to Mr. Ferrari by chance as kind of a loan broker for doing our investment properties. And then that particular person went on to give the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, Mr. Kiyosaki, something like $50,000-$60,000 to enroll in his academy. And he took that out of his retirement, quit his job as far as I know, and went in that. But he introduces me to Walt Ferrari, and just in conversation, Walt says, oh yeah, I've been in the business 35 years. I own like 100 properties and this and that. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I didn't have the money as a teacher at the time to go pay $60,000 for an education. I didn't have any money, right? We're paycheck to paycheck. So I offered to take Mr. Ferrari to lunch, and I proposed to him that I really wanted to learn the business and if he would help me. And he kind of put his hands in the air and said, whoa, I'm no teacher. I'm no mentor. And I just kind of hung in there with him long enough. And the key is you still got to sacrifice something, right? Napoleon Hill in his book, Rich or Think and Grow Rich says, there's no such thing as something for nothing. So I had to offer something in return for something. And the two people that have mentored me in particular, I offered something that they needed. And with Walt, he had this idea to go out of state because, we were speculative here in California. It was really crazy in 2005. Markets going bananas. And so he loved this area in Oklahoma that he thought would be a great area for us to take investors and help them buy cash flow properties. And so because I had a large network and people trust me, I was able to bring a lot of investors, and that was the exchange for the help that I received. And so, but I don't believe in coincidences. I mean, look, the guy that's trying to get me in this pays 60 grand. I don't have it, but I put it out to the world that I wanted to learn the business and I was going to figure it out. There's a thing called law of attraction that I happen to believe in very strongly. I don't mix it up with my faith. My faith is separate. You know, I try not to confuse the two, but I'm a living example of that. Law of attraction works. And I put it out there, and here shows, you know, Walt Ferrari. Yeah. End up having lunch with the guy and takes me under his wing. And for a couple of years, we do 100 deals or so in a very short period of time, and quite the blessing. Yeah.
So it's kind of quite interesting to see the contrast. You know, you did mention like Walt Ferrari. He's not a trained mentor. He's not a trained teacher, but you learn so much from him. But there are a lot of programs out there that, you know, they're based on people who have experience in doing what they do, but they're not quite as good as delivering some of the results for their students. So, you know, there's tons of real estate programs out there, and sure, you in the industry obviously know this. What separates, you know, from one program to the other, and specifically, like, what separates from one program and then another program that actually gets results for their students?
Well, that's an easy answer. So all these programs are really good, right? The information's wonderful. So I'm never going to downplay anybody else. The real difference here in our academy is it's local. We're generally focused on people that want to learn how to flip houses in Southern California, at least for now, and we're hands-on. So there's a hands-off portion that's much cheaper, but in our hands-on, we are there to help them raise capital. They're using our credibility. We're there to help them. Let's say they have to go meet with a distressed homeowner. The other programs, they got to go meet by themselves. Maybe they get a phone call. That person, the trainer, might be in another state, which is crazy because California is such a competitive and it's such a regulated state. And we generally will do all the talking for our students while they sit there and take notes. And so that's the key is, you know, as a teacher, I learned, you know, you don't just play a movie or have them read the book and give them a test. You got to model the behavior for them. The same goes for door knocking. When we go on a door knocking blitz, we don't expect students to door knock. We go door knock, show them what to say, how to do it, and then show them how easy it is. The same with cold calling. If you got to do the things that are uncomfortable, it's best to have it modeled for you, right? And then, you know, so we model everything that they would need to do, and then again with their projects, it's making sure you have the ability to be there for them when they run into problems. For example, we'll fire the contractor for them. You know, a lot of times people don't want to fire someone. I have no problem firing anybody at this point. Old days I would have. Sam has no problem firing a contractor, right? And that's something I had to learn to do over time. But yeah, that's the real difference is I think those other the educational programs are wonderful. It's just they have holes in them, and we help connect, kind of like a Swiss cheese. I call it Swiss cheese education. There's holes. It's great, but it's got a bunch of holes in it, and we help fill those holes with one-on-one.
Okay. So I know, you know, you did tell of a story about one of the students who real estate wasn't their passion, but they used it to fulfill, you know, to get where they wanted to be.
Right.
And it sounds like you kind of get a lot of people that when they want to leave something, but they don't know where to go. So how do you help some of your students find, you know, I think passion is probably maybe an overused word, but for lack of a better term, like maybe some direction, excuse me.
Yeah. So by asking questions, you know, one of the blessings along the way is I ended up getting a psych degree, and in psychology, we're taught how to ask questions to help people answer their own issues, right? So we ask questions that help them come up to a realization of their own issues, at least in the area I was focused on. And so I ask a lot of questions, whether it's a distressed homeowner or a student. I'm there to kind of help them connect the dots. And I quickly will realize that they're, you know, maybe they want the money that's associated with real estate, but they don't want to put in the time. That's not a student I'd want to take on. You're right. And so I guess that would be how I'd answer your question. I ask questions. I listen. I actively listen to what their needs and goals are. And most people don't know what their passion is. You know, I want to make money. Okay. So how are you going to do that? What systems are we going to put in place, and how are we going to face our fear? Because most people that make money are the ones that have failed and they've challenged their fears. And so one of the things I failed to mention in the other part about what we do, especially this year, I realize I can teach how to flip houses all I want, but people still have to get out of their comfort zone and they have to learn how to sell. And in selling, you have to overcome objections. And one of the things I'm really focusing on now is helping people overcome the knee-jerk objection they're always going to get from someone they're approaching with some type of pitch, right? And so I doubt any of these other programs are really teaching how to do that. And that is, to me, the secret of our success is, how do you, when you knock on a door and someone says, I don't like when people knock on my door, well, how do I overcome that right away? Because, or when I make a phone call, when someone says they're geared to not want to talk to you, how do you get past that? And so there's little tricks along the way that we teach, and it's soft selling, because I know most people aren't going to be geared towards hard sales. Soft selling, just little things that you can do to get right past that knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, and as you probably know, I've taken some professional sales training before, and the sales trainer mentioned something that was one of kind of like, oh, that makes sense. It's like, we might have we might not use those specific techniques, or we don't like, people calling during, dinner time, or people calling over the phone or don't. It's because we probably have had a bad experience in those, with those particular situations. And so that's why we don't like doing it. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I was like, oh, that totally makes sense. And so once I sought kind of better experiences in the sales process from other people, it made me become easier in embracing those overcoming objections. And, it's not about hard selling. It's, whatever you want to call it, persistence, or, things like that.
I call it soft selling. Soft selling and follow up. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it almost sounds like you are almost a sales training organization wrapped around a, right. Real estate company. And for a lot of people, they're not born salespeople. They're not born overcoming objections. They're not trained to do this. And for a lot of people, these are certainly outside of their comfort zone. So how have you helped, obviously role playing, but, getting kind of breaking through some of these mental barriers for your students and say, hey, if you want to be successful, this is what you got to master.
Mm-hmm. It's a tough conversation. I want to say that I had an epiphany. I have a very good friend that works for a sales company that pushes high quotas. And I had the conversation. I said, so you're in the sales business and you're selling financial services. Do they teach you how to overcome objections? They teach you how to sell? And that friend said, no. And I said, what's your number one objection? And the number one objection is, I need to talk to my spouse because they're meeting with one of the clients. And I said, so let me get this straight. You work for this company that's very successful, and they're not teaching you how to overcome the number one objection the company gets. I want to know that data. I want to know what my number one objection is so that I can overcome it, teach my people, because they're going to have a much better chance at success. And so I worked with that person on overcoming that objection, and very quickly there was more success right away. And there's just simple ways to get past that. And so I realized that a lot of these companies are just hiring a whole bunch of salespeople, trying to see which the cream that rises to the top, right. And that's who they focus on. That's not fair, because if they just spend a little time teaching and coaching, the underdog salesperson can become the super salesperson. I truly believe that. I think this is an investment. We need to invest in people. And if they choose not to use it, that's on them. But the ones that do, they'll be successful. And I also want to, the difference between us and the other academies is I believe they're just kind of giving education, but we know that 95% of the people are not comfortable with sales. Mm-hmm. They're not going to do some of these uncomfortable things like knock on doors and make phone calls. Mm-hmm. And then they get all nervous when somebody calls them and they don't know what to say. When the distressed homeowner calls you, you have to know what to say. Right. And usually if they're in distress, let's say that they're in pre-foreclosure, they're not thinking they want to sell their house. They want to save their house 9 times out of 10. So you got to be equipped on how to help them save their house first, show that you care about them before they'll want to work with you. And your odds of success go up substantially when you do that. And so I focus on those things and equipping my students with, how do you help them save their house? Not everybody likes that either, by the way, Dan. I don't want to do that. I just want to make money. Well, learn how to help people, and they'll, in turn, you'll make money. It's not super fast. So again, everybody wants instant gratification. And I don't sell Kool-Aid. I say, hey, this is what it takes. It doesn't happen in 6 months. You're not gonna be a millionaire in 6 months. Sorry. Yeah. I know the other guys will tell you that. I would like to say, out of our group, we're having about a 50% success rate.
Mm.
We still deal with human behavior where they won't do the things we tell them to do.
Yeah.
We can't make it any easier. That's the way I look at it. If you can't be successful in our program, oof, you got some other things we got to work on.
Yeah.
Maybe a different direction.
So, of all the years you've been having Fortune Weavers Academy, estimate, how many deals have you gotten, how many students have gone through, and, maybe how many homes you saved as well, because that's important to you.
Well, we have a unique program called the Fortune Price Lift, which is our ministry side, where we help homeowners either save their house or help them flip their own house. And so those are for the people that have a great story and we know that we can invest in them. And so, again, we have that side, which is wonderful. We've done a lot of those in the last 2 years, specifically started that in 2013, and it's grown as a very popular program. And you don't make any money when you help someone save their house, right? But you feel good at the end of the day. There's that fulfillment. And I would much rather look in the mirror knowing I did something good for somebody versus hinder them. And a lot of times when we're buying all cash from someone that's going through a life event, we're getting the benefit of their failure in that moment, or maybe their health issue, or their divorce, or whatever it is. And so this is kind of something we offer to balance that out. Now, success, we have about 220 students in our academy from start to finish. Stayed very small on purpose. That was something we generally won't take on more than 2 to 3 students a month, because we have to give them the hands-on. It's really hard to take on 100 people and think that you're going to serve them well. It's not possible, and that's probably a big difference between a lot of the other groups out there. They're taking on thousands of students a month. Just think of going to college, or you're in that class where there's 300 students versus the class where there's 10 students.
Right.
You're going to get the teacher to student ratio is very important for a good education. And so something we take pride in is not getting too big too fast. And then, so I would say, again, we've had about a 50% success rate. A lot of those people come in and they don't find a deal in their first month and they fall out and they don't attend class anymore. And that's part of that human nature thing we're dealing with. But the ones that stick with it and they do what we teach them to do, they generally will always have success. Yeah.
And you have a lot of students that have gone and used other programs before yours and then come to you and say, hey, like I've spent a bunch of money over here and now I'm going to come to you. What are sort of some of those common threads that you've been seeing with, basically yours being almost like maybe the last stop in their real estate education?
Yeah. And that happens a lot. Usually they spend a whole bunch of money. I have one student in particular says he spent $100,000 on other programs, popular programs, right? Things you hear about on TV, and they hear about Fortune Weavers. They come to one of our meetings and they're like, oh my gosh, I wish I hadn't spent the $100,000 and come here first. But it's not usually the case. Usually, again, because we're not super big and we're not spending money on TV ads or radio ads and stuff like that. Yeah. So yeah, they'll come to us and it's like, oh my gosh, look what I found. I had this comment, I was doing a class 2 weeks ago on how to overcome objections. And one of the more seasoned students goes, oh my God, who had been in other programs and been a part of real estate for a while, said these people have no idea what they're getting. They have no idea how wonderful this is, because they have nothing. Sometimes they have nothing to compare it to.
Yeah.
So I love it when I hear those comments, because it makes me feel good about, what we do. Teaching's a lot of work.
Yeah. And I've been fortunate to teach one semester of law school, and for sure I think I may have lost the money during that that semester, but it was such a wonderful experience to go through. And one of the things I actually like about what you guys do is, obviously not just teaching from the front of the room and then you have the experience, but also the role playing, right? Because it's one thing for me to like, okay, what's my most common objections? How do I respond to this on paper? But it's different when I'm sitting across from somebody and someone's giving me those objections. And then now in the moment, I have to tell them how I'm supposed to overcome those.
Yeah. So the reason why you role play is, and nobody likes doing that. Actually, they don't like role playing because they're put on the spot, especially in front of me. Right. They don't like to be put on the spot in front of the teacher. But the reason why we role play is you want to learn how to role playing is so important, because it's so much easier to fail when you can fix it versus being in a situation where there's money on the line and you get nervous and you say the wrong thing and you cost yourself that sale. And, in our business, that's 50 to $100,000 a lot of times. And so again, most of this is learning how to overcome that fear, right? Because when you don't know something or you don't have all the answers, a lot of times there's an uncomfortable feeling associated with that. And if you get rejected in real life, it's hard to get, maybe you can't get rid of that feeling. Maybe it's going to prevent you from moving forward in the business. So I'd much rather you fail in front of a friendly audience or in front of maybe one or two other people versus fail horribly in a real situation. And then you just can't get back up. Yeah. And I see that a lot where there's that failure and it's like, oh, I'm done. You know, I can't get back from this one. So role playing again, you know, I was watching a video from Grant Cardone. He's one of my favorite sales people, motivational speakers as well. And his people that are his hired salespeople role play every morning for about an hour. Right? Because they're selling their packages. Right. So that's such and I can't stress how important it is to learn how to overcome those objections and know what to say right away. So when it comes up, you got the answer. And then there's the air of confidence. Right. Carry yourself a little different when you already have all the answers.
Air smells better. You sleep better. People call you sir. All right. So there's lots of, benefits of making small progress, and then when you ultimately close that deal, you're right. Nice. So we're near the end here. Let's do some rapid fire questions.
Sure.
And we'll wrap this up. All right. So who do you look up most to?
So one of the things I would stress to anybody that wants to get involved in anything is find somebody that's more successful than you, and see if you can somehow offer something in return for getting their advice. I'm going to tell a little story here. I know. So my son, I think he's 18 at the time. 18-year-olds tend to be going out and dancing a lot, or maybe he was 19, I don't remember. But he goes, Dad, I want to start a nightclub. And, our instant thought in that moment is, you don't know what you're talking about. You're young. No, you're not going to start a nightclub. You don't have the money, blah, blah, blah. But my advice in that moment was, all right, I'm not going to say no. And obviously he'd probably want me to invest in it. Why don't you go interview 2 people that run nightclubs and see what the pros and cons are and see if it's something that you would like to do. So he went and did that. He came back. I don't want to do a nightclub. And so I guess I look up to people that are doing the next level compared to me. So there's plenty of people, we are running about 25, 30 projects at a time. And, there's plenty of people that are buying 30 projects a month, 1,000 a year. So I look up to those people because they have systems in place that are crazy. I mean, we have a hard enough time managing what we have. I can't even imagine, 10 times that or 1,000, just crazy. So I look up to those people that are successful in my industry and other industries that have figured out, because there's a transition that needs to take place when you go from entrepreneur or employee to entrepreneur. I call it a transcendence. You have to go when in the beginning, you want and desire to make money, right? Because money is kind of what we're after. It's not always a sense of fulfillment, at least in the beginning. And I always say you go from wanting and desiring to expectation. So I know for me, there had to be this transcendence that took place, and it came from surrounding myself with other people that were better than me, getting kind of away from my old circle. I never forgot my friends. I love my friends, but you're generally within 15% up or down of the income level of the people you feel the most comfortable with. Yeah. And so I had to start spending time with people that made more money than me, having a different type of conversation. And then that transcendence that takes place from wanting to make money to now expecting to make money. I expect to make a certain amount every year, and it should always grow, right? It should never go down. Yeah. And if you're in business long enough, you're going to have down years and up years. Yeah. But so I look up to those people that are successful entrepreneurs that have been doing it for a while. And usually we see that there's a trend in some of the behaviors that they encompass in their business.
Awesome. What's the best business advice you've received?
Learn to say no and set boundaries. So one of the things when you're starting out is you sort of become a yes man or woman. You say yes to everybody and you want to make the most of every opportunity. Best advice for me was learn to set boundaries, learn to say no. You can't be everything to everybody. And that is really more of a new thing for me. This is the year of discipline for me. I'm learning to set my hours. I used to answer phone calls at 11 p.m. at night. My new hours are 9 to 6. I won't answer a phone call after that. That needs to be family time, because what happens is you tend to sacrifice your family to be a successful entrepreneur, and it's not fair to them. And so, I don't want to be alone in this life. I'm not doing this to be alone. I'm doing this to
Right.
celebrate with the people I love. And so learning to set boundaries has been the best advice. And what I did is I've had people come in and analyze our business model, and people that, in particular last year, we had a person that owned a company that was Forbes, I don't know, top 50 companies in America. He came in and assessed us, and he said some things that weren't very nice to us. And so, and I think that's something that you need to do, is be open to constructive criticism. You don't know it all, right? It's always good to get the data on what's working, what's not, and then ask people that are working with you what you can improve on.
Yeah. Okay. What's the best business book you've read?
So there's two. So the first one, we've talked about both of these, funny enough. The first one was obviously Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's what gave me my start, gave me the kick in the pants to go, okay, I need to make some changes or I'm going to get stuck. And I'm going to get stuck like my mom and dad did, right? Oftentimes we see them and we're like, oh, I'm following in their footsteps. So that was what gave me the epiphany. The second book, which is later, is The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, because the only way, so there's two types of business owners. There's people that work in their business, and there's that work on their business. And your business can own you. And I had to learn to give up some control and create some systems and trust other people in order to scale. So, in order to scale this, eventually we'd like to franchise this. We have a lot of work to do, but that's only going to come with systems. And Michael Gerber says in that book, 90% of businesses fail because they have no systems.
All right. And the last question, what's the biggest challenge in your business right now?
Biggest challenge in the business. My biggest challenge in particular is giving up control.
You're a true entrepreneur.
Yes. So I've brought on other people. I'm trusting other people. I've created several businesses that support the academy. And in each of those businesses, I have an important key person or partner or partners. And that is what I've had to learn to do. So that's been the biggest challenge, is giving up control of your baby.
All right. Hey, so thanks again for your time, Sam. And if we want to learn more about what you do over at Fortune Weavers, where can we find you?
Yeah, fortuneweaversacademy.com. We're on YouTube. If you just Google Fortune Weavers, you'll see our YouTube and our other social media outlets. And we generally give an overview once a month where we kind of share what we're about. And so if you're in the local Southern California market in particular, we do go up to about Paso Robles and we go down to San Diego. If you're in our local market, don't hesitate to reach out to us. I think our email is info@fortuneweavers.com, and you can actually just email us and get some answers real quick and see if there's a fit for us.
Awesome. Hey, thanks again for your time, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds good, Dan. Appreciate the time.
Yeah.
Take care.